My name is Holger Pietzsch. Most people call me Hopi. I work for a company called Hexagon in the heavy construction space. I take care of marketing, and Hexagon has a number of technologies, but I think the one that is most exciting for us today is what we use in the construction space and how this impacts not only how job sites are run more efficiently, but also more sustainably. So let's jump right into it. So let's look a little bit into how construction technology now brings a number of factors together so that a sustainable project and a successful project no longer need to be a controversial thing. Actually, what we feel is that they both can become part of the same equation, two sides of the same coin. Let me start with a few numbers here. So what we see construction today is a heavy construction requires a fair amount of machine population. 60% of that are excavators. The example here is for an excavator. And a typical excavator, if properly recycled, produces around 16,000 kilos of CO2. And you compare that to a tree that can absorb about 25, you realize that 650 years is a long time to kind of, absorb this footprint. These are some of the more chemical numbers. If we look at the financials, we see that yes, the average cost of a highway does cost $28,000, which seems a lot of money. But if you see how much of that actually ends up in the pockets of contractors, so they have the resources for future investments, is not that much. It's less than 1% in the UK, and it's equally low in a lot of other areas. So the debate then often is, well, how do we quadrate the circle? More and more construction is needed. Construction is an industry that requires heavy machinery that has a footprint in terms of CO2, but the affordability isn't necessarily there. And a lot of debates happen in between, who of the various stakeholders now forks the bill. What is often forgotten is, well, maybe it's not just a go around and saying who in between the various stakeholders forks the bill. Maybe all of these conundrums have a common root cause. And to make this a little bit more clear is, let's look at another conundrum that people had for a long time, and that is, why does ice cream consumption and shark attacks, why are they perfectly correlated? And what do we need to do about ice cream consumptions to avoid shark attacks, or the other way around? As we have less sharks, well, we need less ice cream. Well, what people forget is, these two are actually not related to one another. What they do have is a common root cause, a confounding factor, and those are heat waves. As it gets hotter, people have more ice cream, they spend more time at the beach and in the water, so the probability of a shark attack actually increases. And we ask ourselves that same question, is there a confounding factor on causing this conundrum in the construction industry? And the reason we stumbled over this was a research we did in a related topic, and that is, why are some construction projects successful and others aren't? And what we typically see in construction projects or any other project is, if people make the right modification changes, decisions early in the game, they find out that overall, the cost, the required time, the resources spent and used in a project are lower than if you make these decisions later in the game. And we have seen that some top performers consistently deliver projects on time, on spec, on budget, safely and more sustainably. But what is it that these top performers were actually looking into? So we researched a number of them. We did our own correlation studies, and we found that out of several possible factors, it came down to these 8. Top performers, top contractors spent a tremendous amount of time early in their project planning and preparation to make sure that their processes and competencies for design, terrain, resources, data management are up to speed, and that information in between these competencies flows very clearly in between the products, the people, the various phases, and the actual resources consumed and used in that project. So let's spin this thought a little bit further. Let's think about what are the various areas where we could encounter efficiency in one of these top performing projects. And we actually see that well-planned material moved at the right place at the right time, more efficiently by machines that get it right the first time, that themselves are more sustainable, resulting in infrastructure that lasts longer and can be recycled because information about that infrastructure and the material used for the infrastructure is more available. So let's assume that all of these processes could be put in place, and just 10% improvements would be encountered. Well, as you multiply this out, you see that at the end of the life cycle of an infrastructure asset, you find yourself with 47% gain, and that was a conservative 10%. Now, these 47% gain mean 47% fewer resources, fewer emissions, fewer costs, fewer resources consumed in that project, but they also mean that can actually be shared among shareholders as compared to costs that nobody wants to have. We feel that a good chunk of that should end up in the pockets of contractors. What that exactly is, and markets and regulation will need to decide. But the good news is that these gains are not just economical, they are obviously environmental and social to a large degree. So where we go from here, are all the technologies in place to solve this conundrum? Well, you will see that for yourself. You can go to this site. We have made this available for the audience, and you can very quickly assess the various factors, these 8 factors we saw before. You can assess those for your job site. And then, you will see not only how you compare to other contractors, but the site will actually give you recommendations in terms of, which areas should you look at first if you want immediate efficiency gains. Going from here, where are the technologies heading that are required to make this happen? Well, most of them we feel are now in place. The first decade of this century has been very much around creating the internet, connecting people to the internet, making sure that information can be changed and exchanged in between individuals. That second decade has been very much now about making products, machines, internet enabled, so that we can read the machines and we can read, their efficiency on the job site. But the piece that has been missing is our ability to actually read, and when I say read, I mean generating machine readable data about the environment itself, about the surfaces that we shape, the earth that we move, the erosion that can take place. So this data now, with the technologies that are more and more easily available and easier to use, yes, we are now able to digitize nature herself, which is not only important as it gets to then managing the projects that are needed, but also important in regards to monitoring how infrastructure and nature behaves over time and which factors actually impact that. I think we can look into a very promising future. I think, I'm personally very excited about the technologies that are out there. I want to thank an HEO for having had the opportunity to share some of these thoughts. You heard my name. Anybody who wants to reach me on LinkedIn or any other social media is most welcome. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.